Eat, Sleep, Breathe Revolution, the story of Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara was born Thomas Isidore Noel Ouedraogo on December 21st, 1949. He was born to Joseph Sambo Ouedraogo and Marguerite Kinda. He was born in a small town not too far from the capital called Yako. His father, Joseph, was a World War II veteran, and during his time in the French army, he converted to Christianity. Thomas's father was given more opportunities under colonial rule due to being a veteran, such as a job that moved Thomas and his family from Yako to Gawa. At the time of his birth, he already had 2 older sisters. He was the first boy of the family. In total, he would go on to have 10 siblings. His parents desperately wanted a son, so when he was born, his father excitedly proclaimed that the captain is here, thus giving him the nickname Captain, a fun foreshadowing for what the rest of his life would bring. Due to Thomas being the firstborn son, he was granted many privileges, like being sent to primary school in 1956. Thomas was very passionate about school, always asking questions and wanting to be the best in class. This is something that translated into all aspects of his life. In 1962, when Thomas was 12, he got accepted into secondary school in Bobo Dioulasso. Bobo Dioulasso was a fairly big city, and he was sent there on his own, allowing him freedom, but also responsibility. While he was in school, he was exposed to the ever-changing political climate in the Upper Volta. After the election in October 1965, President Maurice Yamiego started doing things that did not align with the views of the people. This led to a revolt that came to a head on January 3, 1966, when Colonel Sangue Lamizana was instated as the new leader of the Upper Volta. After finishing secondary school in the summer of 1966, Thomas was granted admission into Primatin Militaire de Cayadago, a military academy in the Upper Volta. In 1969, once he finished his education in Cayadago, Sankara was chosen for higher training at the Ansarabe Military Academy in Madagascar. While Sankara was in Madagascar, he was a witness to the changing political scene. From 1971 to 1972, there were major protests led by students. These protests were met by violence by the government. In October of 1972, he finished his 3 years of training to become an officer. However, he decided to stay another year to get more training by the Malagasy military on rural development. In 1973, Sankara returned home, but the Sahel was going through one of the worst droughts in modern history. This massive drought led to famine. It was highly televised and shown throughout the Western world. This caused an influx in foreign aid, with things like grain being flown in. While at home, he pondered the drought and extreme poverty. He hated the idea of receiving aid because he felt it was just another way for Western countries to spread their influence. This is an idea he would carry into the way he governed. He was soon given an assignment in Bobo Dioulasso to train incoming recruits for the military. Due to the famine, he agreed to take his younger siblings, Pauline and Paul, to help with the burden on his family. While Lamizana was still in power, he ended the military regime and allowed the Upper Volta to become a multi-party state. During this time, 2 big parties arose, the RDA and the National Liberation Movement, or the MLN, though during this time he would use Red Scare tactics to win elections. During the massive drought and famine, Lamizana blamed the opposing parties for how badly the drought was affecting the Upper Volta, and in 1974 he suspended the constitution and banned the different parties. Due to all this political reshuffling, Thomas was reassigned to the engineering corps and was assigned to oversee the building of infrastructure all over the country. However, during this time, he witnessed widespread corruption. and at great personal risk, he exposed this corruption. In November of 1974, a war broke out between Mali and the Upper Volta. During the war, there wasn't much direct conflict between the two sides. The most action that happened were some Malian soldiers attacked a village and took the chief of the village. Sankara led his platoon into Mali and rescued the chief. This mission led to Sankara emerging as a hero in the Upper Volta. In 1975, corruption continued, but now military officers were taking aid and selling it for a profit. This corruption was eventually exposed, and since it was around the same time as Watergate, the people called it water grain. In 1976, Lamizana formed a new national training center called the CNEC. Lamizana appointed Thomas to take control of it. The CNEC was located in a rural village called Pau. While Thomas was in charge of this base, he was acutely aware of the struggles of rural people in the Upper Volta. For example, there were very few water sources in the village. So when he got back to the capital, he ordered water pumps to be installed so that the village and the people training could have safe water to drink. While overlooking the CNEC, Thomas was highly respected by the soldiers and the community. He would oversee arguments between the people in the village and the soldiers. He taught the soldiers financial literacy, and he even provided instruments and books to help entertain the people during downtime. In March of 1977, people of the Upper Volta started to revolt against the government. Teachers were the first to start a strike. Then medical professionals joined them, and when Lamizana ordered the military to handle the strikes, some of the more left-leaning officers sided with the protesters, leading Lamizana to reinstate the different political parties. In 1978, Thomas was sent to Rabat, Morocco for paratrooper training. From there, he was sent to Pau, France for 3 months of further training. While in France, Thomas would travel to Paris frequently and started to involve himself in student activism and started learning more about communist thinking and finding ways to fuse it with the progressive movements back in the Upper Volta. Later, in 1978, the Upper Volta held a presidential election. Lamizana won the election, though some people, like Thomas, thought that there was corruption in the election. By 1980, grain production in the Upper Volta was failing and food prices were rising. This kick-started a new wave of strikes in the Upper Volta. These strikes raged on, and everything shut down for a month, and by late November, Lamizana was overthrown in a coup led by Colonel Say Zerbo. Thomas had no involvement in this coup, but he sympathized with their ideals and supported their goals of rooting out corruption. During this time, Thomas was living full-time in the capital of Ouagadougou, and in 1981, he was promoted to captain. Colonel Zerbo asked Thomas to be part of his regime. At first, Thomas declined, but by September of 1981, he was named Secretary of State. He was hesitant to join because the regime was still full of corruption. In order to show the people of the Upper Volta that he was on their side, he would bike to work every day and carry himself in the same manner he did before. In his job as Secretary of State, he was also the head of the Information Ministry. He took this job very seriously and encouraged journalists to heavily investigate corruption and abuse of power in this new regime. In April of 1982, a massive strike was mounting in opposition to Zerbo, and on April 12th, right before the strike, Thomas drafted his resignation letter, and then on April 21st, he announced his resignation and condemned Zerbo's regime on radio broadcast. In reaction to this, he was immediately arrested, demoted in rank, and sent to a military camp in Dodogo. He would spend 6 months here. While he was being imprisoned in the military camp, many people would still support him and keep him safe. Soldiers would help him get letters back and forth from his wife, and the soldiers would also allow a doctor to come see him and check in on him. This doctor would also keep him informed of what was happening politically. In September of 1982, he learned of the birth of his second son. He approached some senior officers about being able to visit his family, and on November 1st, he was on a military plane headed to Ouagadougou. Some of his friends and colleagues were on this plane, and this is where he learned of a new coup that they were planning. On November 7th, 1982, Colonel Zerbo was overthrown by a group that was called the Council for the Welfare of the People, or the CSP. The CSP was a group of about 120 representatives of different parts of the military that came together to form this new government. By December of 1982, Thomas started to make speeches showing his support for the new regime and for the labor unions. In early January of 1983, the new Revolutionary Military Organization, or the OMR, gathered together to tell Thomas of their plans to nominate him as Prime Minister. He was sworn in on January 10, 1983, making him President Ouedraogo's number 2. By late February, he was already representing the Upper Volta on the international stage. He visited Tripoli, Libya, and met Muammar al-Gaddafi. In March, he went to New Delhi to take part in a summit for developing countries. At this summit, he sought out to meet revolutionary leaders like Fidel Castro. While back in the Upper Volta, Thomas would give speeches and excite crowds. This was starting to worry President Ouedraogo and other conservative officers in the government. On May 17, 1983, he was arrested on charges of treason. As the news of his arrest spread, there were massive protests in his name. Thomas was released after the protests, but eventually rearrested. It took time to negotiate his release, but finally, on June 16th, he was officially released. On the night of August 4th, 1983, another coup took place. This time, Thomas took a large role in it, and by the morning of August 5th, Thomas Sankara was the president of the Upper Volta. The country was full of people excited by this new change and filled with hope for the future. During his presidency, he acted like no other previous ruler. He didn't have his portrait hung all over the country, he didn't go to meetings in fancy limousines, and he didn't portray himself as better than the rest of the people. In fact, once a week he would play soccer with his staff in places where passerbys could see him in shorts and soccer jerseys. In 1983, another drought hit the Sahel. To combat this, Thomas established the Ministry of Water in 1984. The goal of the Ministry of Water was to get water to the people all over the Upper Volta, as well as to promote self-sustainability. On August 4th, 1984, a year after the coup that instated Thomas as president, he renamed the Upper Volta to Burkina Faso. This was done to further themselves from the colonization that had for so long defined the country. The name Burkina Faso means country of honest people. The name of the people was Burkinabe. This denotes honesty and integrity. This new name resonated highly with the people. By December of 1985, lots of new infrastructure was built, like the 351 primary schools, 314 health clinics, 88 pharmacies, 2,294 new wells, and 274 local water reservoirs. The military also started to be involved with farming, and there was a campaign to fight literacy, build roads, and vaccinate children. This is all highly appreciated by the Burkinabe. On August 4th, 1987, Thomas issued a speech to the people, but in this speech, he was far more subdued than usual, and he used it to take accountability for the mistakes he made along his presidency. He also called for people to unite and help continue to make the country better. Unfortunately, the speech was given too late. Thomas's political rivals were already planning a takeover, and on October 15th, 1987, Thomas Sankara was killed. He was 37 years old.